If you're reading this, then maybe you'll understand why I buried the letter under the floorboards instead of mailing it. Because sometimes the truth isn't meant to travel far, just deep. My name is Eli Morgan, and I live in Magnolia Creek, Alabama. A town too small for secrets, but just big enough for lies to grow roots. I'm 31, a former high school teacher turned auto shop manager. Most people in Magnolia Creek remember me as Coach Eli, the guy who led the Eagles to the regional finals back in 2014. These days, they just remember I'm the guy who never married, drives a rusted Ford, and keeps to himself. That's just the way I like it, or at least that's what I used to tell myself. Before the night I found the box, the one tucked behind a loose panel in my mama's attic, the one that shattered every lie I'd wrapped around my past like an old quilt. Let me back up. You'd think losing your mama to cancer would be the hardest part of your year. It wasn't. Don't get me wrong, her final days were brutal. Watching a strong Southern woman like Eli Morgan, who once raised 3 boys in a garden that could feed half the town, wither away in a hospice bed, it cut something out of you. Clean and cruel. But what came after? 2 weeks after the funeral, I came back to the house. Just me and the hollow echo of every argument and laughter that once lived inside those walls. My older brothers had gone back to their lives, Tom in Tennessee, Mark in Houston. I stayed. Someone had to handle her affairs, pack up the house, donate the clothes, deal with the realtor. And that's when I found it. An old cigar box wedged behind an attic beam, side. A stack of yellowed letters tied with red thread. A photograph of a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. And a birth certificate. Not mine. Not Mark's. Not Tom's. The name on it said, Olivia Morgan, born July 7th, 2001. I stared at that name until my eyes blurred. There was no Olivia in our family. Never had been. The letter on top was addressed to me. Eli, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And it's time you knew the truth. You had a sister. Her name was Olivia. We gave her away. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat on the porch swing, box in my lap, trying to breathe. A sister? A secret baby? Mama had never mentioned her. Not once. Not in a whisper. Not in a sigh. And Daddy had died before I hit 17, so there was no one left to ask except a few old family friends. And I wasn't ready for those questions. Not yet. But it gnawed at me. Why? Why would Mama give up a child? And why keep it from us? I started looking. First the hospital name on the certificate, then the county records. Days blurred into weeks. I nearly lost my job at the auto shop for missing shifts. My brothers thought I was just grieving. They didn't know I was chasing a ghost. Then one evening I found her. Olivia Jane Mitchell, 23 years old, lives in Asheville, North Carolina, works at a floral design studio. No known parents. Adopted. I stared at her Facebook photo for hours. She looked nothing like me. Pale skin, auburn curls, green eyes that seemed to pierce through the screen like she knew I was watching. She looked peaceful. I was unraveling. Should I contact her? Tell her I might be her brother? That our mother, our family, erased her like she was never born? Would it ruin her life? Would it fix mine? I didn't know. So I packed my truck and drove 9 hours through rain, guilt, and silence. I didn't call, didn't message. I just showed up outside her flower shop one Friday morning, heart thudding like it wanted to break free from my chest. She was behind the counter, arranging blue hyacinths. I remember every detail of that moment. The light through the window casting petals across her freckles. The silver charm bracelet on her wrist jingling softly, and then her eyes met mine. She froze. I froze. Can I help you? She asked, her voice calm, but with a hint of caution. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Are you okay? She asked again, stepping forward. And that's when I said it. I think you're my sister. The words didn't just hang in the air, they shattered it. Her face paled. The flowers slipped from her hand. For a long time, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me like she was trying to remember a dream she didn't want to wake from. Need to leave, she said softly, then louder. Now I did. I left the box behind. I don't know if she ever opened it. I don't know if she believed me. But the next night, she called. And that's when the real story began. Because Olivia, she had her own secrets. Bigger than mine, and some of them were were deadly. So tell me, if you found out your whole life was built on a lie, would you dig deeper? Or would you run? The phone rang just after midnight, a North Carolina number. I sat up on the motel bed, heart pounding as I stared at the screen. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew who it had to be. I answered. There was silence on the line, not the accidental kind. This was the kind that held its breath, that weighed every syllable before it dared to speak. Then finally, a voice. "Why now?" she asked. It was her. Olivia. I swallowed hard. "I didn't know until a few weeks ago. Found a box in our attic." "You were in it. You make it sound like I'm a memory," she replied coldly. "But I'm not. I'm real. My life doesn't need." "I'm not here to ruin your life," I said quickly. I don't know what I'm here for, but I had to try." Another pause. Then a sigh. "I read the letters," she said, "and the birth certificate. You really think Janine Morgan is my mother?" "I know she is." Silence again. Then she whispered, "Then who the hell raised me?" That was the first moment I realized something wasn't adding up, because Olivia didn't sound angry. She sounded scared. We met the next morning. Neutral ground. A walking trail on the outskirts of Asheville, where the trees wore early autumn like fragile promises, and no one asked too many questions. She wore a gray hoodie and aviator sunglasses. Her eyes stayed hidden most of the time, but her hands fidgeted constantly, like they were searching for something to hold on to. "You said Janine was your mother, so who was your father?" "Brett Morgan," I said. "He passed in '09, car accident." "You were 8 back then." She looked away. "I was adopted in 2002. My files say my parents were anonymous, sealed records. I always thought it meant drugs or poverty. Maybe they were teenagers or something." I shook my head. "No. Mama was 38. Daddy was 41. They weren't poor. No, they just hid you." She stared at me for a long time, like she was dissecting my face for any resemblance. "I've seen you before," she finally said. "Online. A photo from some high school football team. You look like him, like your dad." I felt something tighten in my chest. "I don't know why they gave you away," I said, "but I'm trying to find out." She narrowed her eyes. "What if I don't want to know?" "You wouldn't have called me if that were true." I shut her up. We walked for a while after that, in silence. The path curved around a shallow creek, its surface littered with fallen leaves. A group of kids ran past with dogs and scooters, reminding me of a life that felt 100 years away. Then Olivia spoke again, quietly. "The woman who raised McCarlucci died when I was 17. Heart attack. It was just the two of us. She used to say I came into her life like a miracle, but sometimes she'd drink and say things. Half-finished things. Like what? Like I was never supposed to keep you? Or your mother would never forgive me? I thought she meant her ex or something. I never thought it was literal." I exhaled slowly. That box in the attic had letters from my mother to someone named Carla. There was one that said, "We're trusting you with our secret. No one can ever know what happened at the lake." Olivia's head snapped toward me. "The lake." "Yeah," she blinked fast. "Carla never talked about a lake." I reached into my coat and pulled out the folded map I'd brought. "I think it's referring to Lake Hemlock, about 3 hours from Magnolia Creek. Our family had a cabin out there in the 90s. We stopped going around. 2001, the year you were born." Her hands trembled slightly as she took the map. "I want to go there," she whispered. "Right now." I hesitated. "It's overgrown, abandoned. I don't even know if the road's drivable anymore. I don't care." She looked at me not as a stranger anymore, but as someone desperately chasing a truth that had been kept just out of reach. So we drove. 3 hours through winding roads and forests that hadn't heard a car horn in years. The GPS lost signal halfway in, but I remembered the route. Muscle memory, like learning to ride a bike again. Olivia sat beside me, silent but alert, fingers tracing something in her coat pocket. A keychain, I noticed, shaped like a bird. "We went to the lake for holidays," I said as we passed a bent road sign half swallowed by vines. "Easter, summer break, sometimes Christmas. But in 2001, everything stopped." "I thought it was because Dad got into a fight with his brother over land rights." "What if it wasn't?" Olivia murmured. We reached the gate just past dusk. Rusted. Chained. but the side path was still walkable. We hiked the last mile through damp pine needles and moonlight until the cabin came into view, weather-worn. Leaning slightly, but still standing, the door was unlocked. Inside, dust danced in the fading light. The fireplace was stuffed with old newspapers. A wooden crib leaned against the wall. Eli. Olivia's voice was shaking. She'd found something in the corner. A box. Not a cigar box this time. A metal one. Locked. She turned to me. Break it. I did, with a rock and a lot of effort. Inside, baby clothes, an ultrasound photo, and a VHS tape marked June 23rd. Do not watch. In bold red letters. I just stared at it. I have a VHS player back at the motel, I said, trying to sound calm. Ken? No, Olivia interrupted. We're watching it here, but... She was already pulling a battery-powered portable player from her backpack. Why do you have that? I asked. She gave a faint, bitter smile. Let's just say I've had a hunch for a long time. The tape went in. The screen flickered. And then our mother's face appeared. She looked younger, tired, holding a baby Olivia. Her voice cracked as she spoke into the camera. If anything happens to me, if someone ever finds this, please know we didn't have a choice. What happened at Lake Hemlock that night was not an accident. It wasn't. It wasn't natural. She turned to someone off screen. Carla, please, turn it off. Static, then black. I looked at Olivia. She wasn't breathing. Her eyes locked on the dark screen like it might turn back on and explain itself. But it didn't. It's not an accident, she whispered. Not natural. What the hell does that mean? I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. It wasn't just a story about a secret baby anymore. Something happened here. And we were about to dig it up. We didn't speak much on the way back to town. The tape kept playing in my head. My mother's face. Her voice cracking. The words, not an accident, not natural. I've replayed that sentence in my mind 100 times now, and no matter how I twist it, the conclusion keeps circling the same drain. Something happened at that lake 23 years ago. Something nobody was ever supposed to find out. By the time we reached the motel, Olivia looked drained, pale, quiet. You okay? I asked as I turned off the truck. She didn't answer, just opened the door and walked up to her room. We both stayed in separate rooms that night, even though I offered to stay nearby. There was a distance in her eyes I hadn't seen before, not fear. Something colder, like betrayal. I spent the night staring at the ceiling fan in my room, trying to piece everything together. Mama's letters, the hidden box, Olivia's adoption, the tape. Why record a confession only to lock it in a cabin? And why had Mama looked over her shoulder like she expected someone to burst in and stop her? By morning, Olivia was waiting outside my door. I need to talk to someone who knew your parents, she said without greeting. Someone outside your brothers. There's only one person left, I said. And we haven't spoken in years. Eleanor Webb was my mom's best friend back in the 90s. She was the church choir director, tired nurse, and the town's biggest collector of rumors, both real and embroidered. She used to give us butterscotch candies when we were little and tell stories with just enough truth to feel dangerous. She now lived in a trailer on the edge of Magnolia Creek. Her front yard was filled with broken wind chimes and forgotten furniture. When I knocked, the door creaked open on its own, like even the house was suspicious of us. Eleanor, I called out, stepping inside. It's Eli Morgan. I need to ask you something. About my mom. Silence. Then a shuffle. She appeared at the end of the hallway like a ghost, wrapped in a shawl, her white hair falling loose. Eli, her voice cracked. You look just like your daddy. She peered over my shoulder. And you must be Olivia. That froze both of us. How do you know who I am? Olivia asked sharply. Eleanor didn't answer. She walked slowly toward the kitchen, motioning for us to follow. She poured 3 cups of black coffee, her hands trembling slightly. I hoped this day would never come, she said. But I knew it would. You two were always bound to find each other. You knew about Olivia, I asked. All these years? She nodded. I was the one who drove your mother to the hospital when her labor started. Middle of the night, she was bleeding bad, and your daddy was out of town on business. I stayed with her through the whole thing. She stared into her coffee like it could show her the past. But after Olivia was born, something changed. Changed how? Olivia whispered. Eleanor's voice dropped. Your mama wouldn't hold you, wouldn't even look at you. She just stared at the wall and whispered, the lake did something. She's not, right? A cold shiver ran down my spine. She said it was cursed, Eleanor went on. At a week before you were born, they were at Lake Hemlock. Something happened in the woods. Something she wouldn't speak about, only that it followed her home. She was convinced it had gotten inside her. Olivia's hand curled tightly around her cup. So she gave me away because she thought I was cursed. She gave you away, Eleanor said, because she was terrified. She tried to tell your father, but he thought it was postpartum madness. So she contacted Carla, an old friend who'd left town years earlier. They made a deal. Carla would raise you. But she had to disappear. New name, no contact, nothing. My thoughts reeled. You knew all this, I said, and you didn't tell anyone? I promised your mama I wouldn't, she said. And back then, secrets were easier to bury than truth. What happened in those woods? Olivia asked, her voice sharp. Eleanor looked up, her eyes wet. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. 2 days before the birth, I found your mama standing in the backyard at 3 a.m., barefoot in the rain, humming a lullaby I'd never heard. Her hands were covered in dirt. She didn't remember how she got there. Dirt, Olivia echoed. She kept whispering. It's under the tree. It's still breathing. A thick silence followed. Under what tree? I asked. She wouldn't say. That night Olivia didn't sleep. Neither did I. We drove back to the lake the next morning, this time with shovels. We searched for hours. Every large oak, every spot that felt like it didn't want to be looked at. The woods were quiet, unnaturally so. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, and Olivia found it. A spot near the lake where the earth was loose. Fresh. Almost too fresh. She dropped to her knees and began digging, bare hands tearing into the soil. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. That's when she hit wood. A small wooden box. It's not a casket. Smaller, like a keepsake chest. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside was a doll. Hand-stitched, mouth sewn shut, eyes made of river stones. Wrapped in the same hospital blanket from the photo we found in the attic. Olivia stared at it, her face pale. Then she whispered, I've seen this before. I looked at her. Where? My dreams, she said. Since I was 5, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the trees, something moved. We weren't alone anymore. The wind whipped through the trees like it had something to say. We stood frozen in that clearing by Lake Hemlock, Olivia, holding the doll like it might vanish if she blinked. Me standing guard like I could protect her from whatever shadows the forest still remembered. The thing was, I didn't believe in curses. I didn't believe in haunted woods, stitched-up dolls, or inherited nightmares. Until that moment. Until Olivia said, I've seen this before. Where? I asked again, quieter this time. She didn't look up. It was always the same. A woman standing over me in the woods holding this doll, her face covered in dirt. She hums this strange lullaby over and over like she's trying to remember the words. What does she look like? I never see her face, Olivia whispered. But every time I wake up crying, I stared at the doll. The stitches on the mouth weren't decorative. They were frantic. It's like someone had sewn them shut in fear, not love. Eli, Olivia looked up at me. What if something really did happen to her out here? Something she never escaped from? I didn't have an answer. But I knew we needed help. Real help. The next day we met with a local historian named Riley Denton, a woman in her 60s, who ran the Blue Ridge Archives in a quiet office building off Main Street. When we explained we were researching Lake Hemlock, she raised a brow. Lake Hemlock, she repeated. That place hasn't shown up in the public record since '98. Used to be a weekend camp spot, but something happened out there. A girl went missing. Police said it was an animal attack, but folks around here never bought it. What was her name? Olivia asked. Riley pulled out an old microfilm roll and set it on the machine. She clicked a few times until a grainy newspaper page blinked onto the screen. June 28, 1998. Magnolia Courier. Teenager disappears near Lake Hemlock. 17-year-old Celeste Granger vanishes during family camping trip. Search yields no results. Area closed indefinitely. That's not all, Riley said. A few years later, another family went missing. Same area, Same pattern. Disappearances. No trace. County quietly shut the road and erased it from the maps. My throat tightened. That's the year Olivia was born. Riley frowned. And your mama. Janine Morgan. That name sounds familiar. She rummaged through an old filing cabinet and pulled out a visitor log from a church. Prayer group dated July 2001. A dozen names scribbled in fading ink, but one stood out. Janine Morgan. Prayer request. Forgiveness. A child born under dark sky. The forest took something. I want it back. I felt a chill run through me. What do you mean, the forest took something? I asked. Riley shrugged, eyes narrowed. Your guess is as good as mine. But if your mother went to that lake pregnant and came back talking like this, maybe she believed something else came back with her. Olivia stood abruptly. We're going back to the cabin. I turned to her. Olivia. I don't care if it sounds crazy, she said, voice tight. I need to know what she meant. I need to know what I am. There it was. Not who. What? That night, the rain started around midnight. You reached the cabin at 1:30 a.m., flashlight beams cutting through the mist. The air was dense, heavy like soaked wool. We stepped inside the cabin again, the floorboards groaning like they remembered our weight. The VHS player still sat on the table, but something was different. The doll was gone. Olivia gasped. I left it right here. We searched the cabin top to bottom, overturned the mattress, pulled open every drawer. Nothing. It's gone, she whispered. Someone took it. Or it walked out. I didn't say that part out loud. Instead, I focused on what we could still control, headed to the attic. The last place we hadn't checked. It was cramped and dusty, filled with boxes of holiday decorations and moldy board games. But in the far corner, behind a pile of old blankets, I found a second camcorder. It looked ancient, the kind that ran on cassette tapes. I climbed down, handed it to Olivia. Battery's dead. She nodded and pulled out a portable charger from her bag. Give me 10 minutes. As she worked, I stared out the window. Then I saw it. A shadow. Not walking, floating. A figure at the edge of the woods, facing the cabin. Just standing there. No flashlight, no umbrella, no sound. Olivia, I whispered. She looked up, followed my gaze. The figure was gone. We ran outside, flashlights blazing, shouting into the trees. Nothing. No tracks. No footprints. Just wind. Eli, Olivia whispered. It's happening again. I turned toward her. What do you mean? She looked up at me, eyes brimming with tears. When I was little, Carla used to sleep with a chair against my door. She said I sleepwalked. But now I think she wasn't locking me in. She was locking something out. And maybe it had followed her here. We drove back in silence. Not because we had nothing to say, because we didn't know how to say it. That figure in the woods hadn't made a sound, hadn't taken a step, just stood there, watching. The doll, the one Olivia claimed had haunted her dreams, was gone. The lines between memory, madness, and something more had officially started to blur. We got back to the motel just before sunrise. Olivia dropped into the armchair like she hadn't slept in years, poured 2 coffees, handed one to her, and sat down. She didn't drink it. Instead, she reached into her jacket and pulled something out. A piece of the doll's blanket. I found it stuffed behind the attic floorboard in the cabin, she said. I didn't tell you earlier. I thought maybe it was just mold or my imagination. I leaned closer. It wasn't mold. It was blood. Dried. Old. Rust-colored. I stared at it, my stomach turning. You think your mother tried to destroy it? She didn't succeed, Olivia whispered. She hid it. But it never left. She looked at me. I need to see your brother, Mark. She nodded. The one who stayed furthest from home. The one Mama never called after she got sick. I checked the hospice log. She never once listed him as a contact. Why? I swallowed. They had a falling out years ago. Something about money land, she said. He broke a promise. I think it was something bigger. Mark lived in a gated neighborhood outside Houston. Brick home. American flag on the porch. A man who looked like he'd built a normal life and sealed the trauma of his childhood in concrete. He opened the door wearing cargo shorts and a college football hoodie. His smile dropped when he saw Olivia. "What is this?" he asked. "We need answers," I said flatly. "About the lake, about 2001, about the sister we never knew." He stared at Olivia. "I always wondered when you'd show up," he said quietly. Olivia flinched. "You knew?" He stepped aside. "Come in." His house was immaculate. Not a single photo of our parents. Not one picture of the lake, or the old house, or us. Once we were seated, Mark spoke. "I was 17 when Mama got pregnant. I knew it wasn't Daddy's." I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "He'd had a vasectomy after you were born, Eli. They didn't think we knew, but I overheard them talking about it one night." Olivia froze. "Then, who was my father?" Mark looked her dead in the eyes. "Carla's brother. His name was Henry. He came to stay with us for 2 weeks the summer of 2000. Claimed he was just passing through. Mama got weird when he arrived. Spent all her time in the woods. Said she was looking for herbs, for healing. That's when she started having those dreams." I felt the floor fall from under me. "Henry was off," Mark continued. "He'd sit in the basement and draw things. Circles with symbols. Dead birds pinned to cardboard. One night I found him digging a hole in the woods. When I asked what he was doing, he smiled and said, 'Preparing the vessel.'" Olivia's voice cracked. "Vessel?" 6 months later, Mark said, Mama was pregnant, and Daddy never said a word. He just looked tired. I tried to wrap my mind around it. "Are you saying Olivia is?" "I'm saying," Mark interrupted, "that Mama believed she carried something unnatural. Not just a child, but a consequence." Olivia stood up. "Why didn't she tell me?" Mark's voice softened. "Because she loved you. And she hated herself for that." Then he handed her a manila folder. "She mailed this to me 2 weeks before she died. Told me not to open it unless you ever came looking." Olivia opened it slowly. Inside were 2 things. A letter and a sonogram, but not the first one. This one showed a malformed fetus, oversized head, spinal deformation, something wrong with the eyes. The date. June 25th, 2001. A week before Olivia was born. The letter was scrawled in Mama's handwriting, barely legible. "The baby has dreams while still inside me. I see them. I feel them. It's not mine. It belongs to the woods. It sings when I try to sleep. It hums through the floorboards. I can't hold it. I won't. Carla will take it." She said she would bury the past. Olivia dropped the letter, her hands shaking. "I don't believe this," she whispered. "I did, because I remembered Mama screaming in her sleep when I was a teenager. And I remembered the words she muttered in the middle of the night, half asleep and shivering. I didn't bury it deep enough. We stayed in Houston that night. None of us could sleep. In the early morning, I found Olivia standing on the balcony, staring out over the neighborhood like it was a battlefield. "I want to go back one more time," she said, "to the cabin." She shook her head. "To the basement." I blinked. "Basement? What basement?" Olivia turned toward me, her face pale and unreadable. "There's a door under the lake house. Behind the water heater. I saw it in my dream." I frowned. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." We got to the cabin just after sundown. This time, we brought more than flashlights. A crowbar, rope, salt. Not because we believed in ghosts or curses. Because we didn't know what else to believe in anymore. The crawl space beneath the cabin was damp and cramped. But just as Olivia had said, behind the rusted heater was a panel, warped by moisture. I pried it loose. Behind it, a door, not a normal one. Metal, sealed with a latch that looked hand-welded. We opened it together. The smell hit us first. Earth, mold, and something else. Old. Inside was a small room 10 by 10 feet. Concrete walls, single wooden chair bolted to the floor, and in the chair was the doll. Upright eyes staring, its mouth no longer sewn shut. The threads had been torn loose. There was something in its lap. A cassette tape. No label, just a black ribbon, taut. Waiting. We didn't speak. We couldn't. Not while that doll sat in the center of the hidden room, head tilted like it was listening, like it had been waiting for us. Olivia knelt beside it, her fingers trembling. She reached for the cassette tape resting in its lap. "Don't play it," I said instinctively.
Opt.
She looked up at me. I have to. Back at the motel, we borrowed an old tape player from the front desk, one of those clunky black ones they kept for emergencies and nostalgia. Olivia sat cross-legged on the bed, eyes fixed on the player. I hovered near the window, the silence pressing against my chest like a stone. She pushed play. Static, then a voice. Not Mama's. Carla's. If you're hearing this, then I failed. I didn't keep her safe. Not from the whispers. Not from the things she carried. The room felt colder. The child is not a curse. She's a song. The forest doesn't want to hurt. Hurt wants to come through her. It always has. Since the day Henry opened the circle, I turned toward Olivia, who looked like she might throw up. Tape continued. Janine thought giving her away would break the tether. But it only broke the silence. I tried to keep her grounded. But when she started sleepwalking, when she sang in voices not her own, I knew the forest still had a hold. There was a pause. Then the voice came back. No longer Carla. A child's voice. Singing. Soft, haunting. Not in English. Not in anything I recognized. The same lullaby Olivia had hummed in her sleep. She had stopped. Dead silence. No one moved for a long time. Then Olivia spoke. I remember now. I turned toward her. What? I wasn't adopted at 6 months, she said, staring down at her palms. I was 4. I remember her face. Mama. She tried to drown me. I froze. She brought me to the lake, middle of the night. Was in pajamas. She held me under. I remember her crying, saying she was sorry, that she loved me. That this wasn't who I was supposed to be. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but I didn't drown. She looked up at me, her eyes glassy. Carla found me, pulled me out. She told everyone I'd been kidnapped, that she rescued me, but it wasn't true. Mama gave me away again, this time to the water. I wanted to speak, but there was nothing left to say. 2 weeks passed. Burned the doll. We sealed the basement. Left the cabin behind and never went back. Mark and I sold the lake house to the state. They bulldozed the cabin and cleared the trees. Nothing but a scar remains now. But I don't believe for 1 second that it's over. Olivia moved to a new city, changed her name, started over. We talk sometimes, quietly, like siblings who met in a war zone and never really made it out. One night she called just after midnight. I'm pregnant, she said. I gripped the phone tighter. Are you okay? She paused. I think so. Silence. Then she whispered, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear the lullaby. Still live in Magnolia Creek. The house is quieter now. The attic's been cleared. The letters are gone. But every now and then, I drive out past where the lake used to be. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I hear humming in the trees. Not a curse. Not a ghost. Just something waiting. Listening. Like it remembers. If you learned your entire identity was built on lies, but uncovering the truth could awaken something terrible, would you still dig it up? Tell me in the comments.